Presenting today's topic is Tom Updegrove. Tom is an information security expert with over 35 years of experience. He has extensive experience in computer networking security, firewalls, switches, IDS, VPNs, remote access, disaster recovery, and backup planning. He has worked on the creation and deployment of solutions for protecting networks, systems, and information assets for over 10 years for diverse organizations. And his training techniques have a proven track record of delivering in-depth knowledge of his practice areas. Now, please bear in mind that this is just an overview of a very robust topic, and we do offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. And if you're interested in a further discussion about any of those, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at www.netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. NetCom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adopting change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. And we have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the security practice area. NetCom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio for security classes. Our upcoming classes include various trainings on Certified Network Defender V2, Certified Ethical Hacker V11, Computer Hacking Forensics V10, and more. Private training to teams is also available, and the learning plans for those can be customized to the specific needs of that audience. You can also access a variety of security marketing assets, such as the free 1-hour training, free on-demand training, and blogs by clicking on the available webinar handout. And these offerings can also be found with a simple search on our website, www.netcomlearning.com. In this webinar, we will understand the latest investigation practices using groundbreaking digital forensics technologies. And we will also explore the ways for using threat intelligence to anticipate and investigate complex security threats, record and report cyber crimes to prevent future attacks, and much more. And now I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we do get started today. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the escape key and find the zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters, but you can feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters in the questions panel, and we will address them at the end of the session today. Also, to get the best out of today's webinar, we've included the slides, courses we've talked about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. You can refer to those to get a better understanding of the topic. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass the time over to Tom to present for us. You should be able to share your screen now, Tom. Thank you and welcome.
Yep, and there you go. And so, thank you, Leela. Always a wonderful introduction, and I just love listening to your voice.
Oh, thank you so much.
So here we are, certified hacking forensic investigator. First look. Okay. It's a fantastic course. I really enjoy the course actually through all its iterations, but this one certainly has added some new tools, some new techniques, and it's really a gas. So let's kind of roll on with it. There are 16 modules at this point. One of the new areas is actually down here in module 16, the Internet of Things. And it's an important area because now everybody has a Apple Watch, a Fitbit, a Ring doorbell, and certainly in industry, these small, somewhat programmable devices, hold a lot of information in them. So it's an important area to get into, mobile malware. But just running through the modules, what role does forensics play in today's world? Because today we have degrees of compliance, even higher insurance requirements. It's a very important area. Certainly computer crime, or we just lost our data. Maybe our phone got fried. Where'd that data go? Is it retrievable? It would really take somebody that has this level of skill to be able to recover that information. How the investigation process works, the so-called chain of custody in terms of how you manage the evidence that is collected, if it is a crime. It's important that you understand that process and how to avoid damage, destroying or tainting the evidence. You need a good understanding of the storage media, whether it would be a digital flash card or traditional hard disk. How file systems work and what the difference is, between Windows machines, Linux machines, Apple, and so on. Data acquisition and duplication, what's the steps that you take in order to avoid damaging the data. Let's say that a system is hacked, compromised by, we don't call them hackers anymore. We call them threat agents, but we know what a hacker is at this point, right? So how can we preserve and really understand what happened? It's important that we have an understanding so that we can prevent it from happening again, so we can learn something from it. So it's good that we have these techniques. Defeating anti-forensic techniques. How do people, what do they do to try to avoid, and cover up their tracks, so to say? What do we look for? And again, I did say that we have some Windows, Linux, and Mac forensic techniques. It differs. I mean, the principles are pretty much the same, but it differs from system to system. Network forensics a little different because it's data that's flowing on the network. But there are techniques in order to do that. And it may be that how did maybe the compromise come into the network, or how are we losing data? Is it something that's on a particular computer, or is it something that is on the network or network devices? It's very possible that a printer, the actual BIOS chip that is in the computer or in the printer itself is compromised. We need a technique in order to really understand how that happened. And we move into investigating web attacks, web servers, web applications. Let's face it, 50% of what we're doing today is all web-based, like we're doing now. This is a web-based seminar, isn't it? So we're using a web server that is delivering this conferencing tool, and it's very possible that a system like this could be compromised. And so we need to understand more about web attacks. Okay? The dark web forensic could be interesting when we get to that point. We'll talk a little bit about the dark web and how people use it and what the onion routers and Tor network is really about. Database forensics, we need an understanding how databases work, how databases store data, how that information can get tainted, and at the same time, how we can protect it. Of course, when we're talking about web servers, we're really talking about the cloud, aren't we? But there are other aspects of the cloud, and we need to understand what e-discovery is in the cloud. It's a very important area, and we need to understand really what the cloud provider's actual policy, what the end user's policy is, as well as the provider's policy. Email crimes, probably one of the biggest areas in e-forensics, because it is probably our primary form of communication today. And probably way ahead. We probably spend more time in email than we do on phones at this point. Malware forensic. So how did it happen? Where is that? What is that malware doing to our system? Is it something that we can discover? So how do we discover it? How do we capture that volatile memory information? And what happens when a system's rebooted? Does it change? Do we lose something? Mobile forensics and IoT forensics, two very, very important areas. This is what kind of has brought us to version 10 of the CHFI course. So our objectives in module 1, and just understanding really what forensics is about, right? We have different types of crimes, indicators of compromise. What is an indicator of compromise? How do we know that there's something fishy going on? Indicators of compromise is, I think, an important area to develop your kind of so-called spider sense. I like to call them red flags. Your computer's acting a little wonky. You're getting bombarded, and then you're just getting messages that seem a little fishy, a little strange. It's important to understand that. The overview of different types of digital evidence and rules of evidence. How do we deal with evidence? All forensic isn't necessarily crime related, but we need to understand sometimes just how a mistake happened. Very, very important. Readiness planning. Business continuity. So when something does happen and we need to understand, do we have a plan in place that we can evaluate the system without disturbing really business continuity? As well, the roles and responsibilities of the forensic investigator. More or less, what is your behavior? What's appropriate? What's not. And as well, the legal compliance or the legal aspects of being a computer forensic investigator. And it varies from state to state. Really, it can vary from city to city. Certainly, it varies from country to country. And so, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that is surprising to you, that what goes on here in the United States is going to be different than it is in the EU, or Asia as well. And, even in the very suppressive, in fact, I just had a conversation with somebody in Myanmar, and they're supposedly going to be banning 3 and 4G. So a very repressive regime, and people, in a sense, I guess, are trying to develop, I guess, strong anti-forensic techniques. And we're not even going to go on, what's happening in Russia and so on at this point. But what is forensics, right? A set of methodological procedures and techniques that help identify, gather, preserve, extract, interpret, document, and present evidence from computing equipment, such as any discovered evidence that is acceptable during a legal and/or administrative proceeding. Identify, gather, preserve, extract, interpret, and document. We'll find that the documentation and report writing, as it is in ethical hacking and pen testing, can take 90% of the time. You're going to put it into a format that people can understand. Types of cyber crimes. And so an insider attack, is that person on the inside. Could be someone who has exfiltrated a client list, and maybe somebody who is moving to another company may have taken information they shouldn't. Could be somebody stole the secret sauce. So insiders are a really important part, and you need to have a process in place. So that's one of the things you're looking for. And that versus the external attack, where someone got into the network in one way or another. It was either they clicked on an email, they clicked on a link in a website. Many ways as this happens. It's probably more the ethical hacking domain, as to how these things happen. We should know how these things happen, of course, and we do work into that in the course. But the real game here is, what do we do about it? Once we know what's happened. Another important point is what's the impact, of cybercrime. We can, there's what we call the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So a crime could be a denial of service type attack, which can actually knock a system out. Sometimes we have denial of service attacks that simply happen because a website might not be ready for it. For instance, when healthcare.org first rolled out, the website just wasn't ready for it. Another kind of shot in the foot kind of thing was that during the most recent Super Bowl, when Coinbase rolled out their commercial, they had an unprecedented lookup. Everybody wanted to know what was going on with Coinbase, and so many people actually did a quick lookup that they actually took the Coinbase website down. So that would be availability. Confidentiality and integrity are two other areas that we need to keep. Confidentiality is simply when I have certain data, I want that data to make sure that it stays the same as I either have it on the system, okay, as well as with integrity. The integrity is the data never changes a bit. And sometimes that data is stolen. Who stole it? And how did it get stolen? Was the data encrypted? Was the data in clear text? Disruption is going to relate to availability, of course. And next to loss of life, loss of reputation, ranks, number 2. And loss of customer and stakeholder trust is very, very, damaging. Because today it's ironic that we hear of compromises, systems getting hacked, and yet the companies don't seem to really have their reputation damaged that much. And I guess it's because we're just overwhelmed, and the shock of it is such that we're just numb to it at this point. But if it holds true that there is reputational damage, financial losses are going to follow with that. And of course, penalties, especially in areas where there are compliance, like in the credit card industry or in healthcare, there can be large penalties. Also in financial sector, there are penalties arising from the failure to comply with regulations. And this is a big area really for forensic to be able to ascertain who was at fault, was someone at fault. And as well, really, if you could show that you had done your due diligence, perhaps you can arrest those kind of penalties. So, because we're in a digital world, we need to understand what digital evidence is about, how digital information is stored. Typically, you see here, you got a picture of a hard drive, and it's one of the most commonest ways. Although the mechanical hard drive is kind of falling the way of the, I guess, the phonograph. And as we move more and more, we just, solid state drives just tend to be much faster. They're getting less expensive, and it's becoming the preferred way of storing data. Digital evidence is defined as any information of probative value. It's either stored or transmitted in a digital form, right? So it's either at rest or it's en route. How is that, how can we deal with that, and how can we preserve it? Digital evidence is circumstantial and fragile in nature. So it can be lost easily if it's not handled properly. So you, as a forensic investigator, need to understand the procedure and techniques for preserving that. And according to Lockhart's exchange principle, anyone or anything entering a crime scene takes something of the scene with them and leaves something of themselves behind. It's so very, very important. It's a little different in the forensic case. Usually, like I have associates who work strictly in this field. Okay, myself, I tend to be more of a all-around kind of troubleshooter. I'm more of an ethical hacker than I am a forensic investigator, but I understand the principles very, very well. Normally what happens is a laptop is confiscated, that has been thought to have been used in a crime. Let's say perhaps thought that the person was involved in some kind of kiddie porn type stuff. So they'll take that laptop. They'll actually try to, if the laptop were on, they'll try to actually understand what's live in the memory of the machine itself. But once that machine is off, and then that memory is captured, they will then remove the drive. They will clone the drive in a way that does not affect the drive. They'll make the drive read-only. They'll get a perfect clone of the drive, and then they'll do all the work on that drive. And same principle really holds true when you are trying to recover data. You never try to recover the data on the drive itself. You try to get a copy of that. And in many, many ways, that's done as we kind of go on here. Roles and responsibilities, right? So the investigator is going to perform a series of tasks. They got to determine the extent of any damage done during the crime, recover the data of investigative value, recover an image of the original evidence without tampering with it, to maintain its integrity. So by integrity means that nothing about that data has changed. There's not one thing added. So, and typically they use a technique called hashing. So the drive itself, you try to never ever do anything with it. But when you take create a copy and a clone of that, there's a technique called hashing that you can create a perfect copy of it. And that perfect copy should match a hash of the real copy. So you can hash the original copy as long as the original device is in a read-only mode. So nothing can be added to it. So the investigator, gets to analyze, prepare a report once it's analyzed, right? They can draw some inferences from that to help the organization understand how these things happened. And as well, a report would be helpful if they had to ever testify in court. And certainly we have certain legal compliance, right? These are just some of the areas. The Graham-Leach, this is the Graham-Leach-Biley Act was developed in 2008 in regards to insider trading. And, the FISMA, which is the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, the HIPAA, which is, as I said, health, PCI DSS, payment card, it is a standard that has been developed by the credit card industry. In itself, it's not a law, but if you found that you were out of compliance with PCI, you could lose your right to process a credit card. Electronic Communication Privacy Act, GDPR, this is in Europe. Most of the states today, California has their data protection. You're going to find every state's going to have some type of data protection. New York State has its, and SOX is Sarbanes-Oxley. So these are all, and there's going to be more. Today, we're finding, as I said, the insurance industry is used to accept self-signed or a self-assessment type questionnaire. Today, they're starting to require third parties to make assessments. And so, module 2, the process. What goes on in the process, right? So we need to understand the importance of it. What's the pre-investigative phase? The investigative phase, as well as post-investigative phase. So we need to ensure the integrity of the evidence, most importantly. Naturally, we're complying with any local laws and established precedents. Well, we need to follow a repeatable, well-documented set of steps that we can explain in the fact that you may be cross-examined, as the investigator. Right. So again, these three phases, right? Pre-investigation, your task performed prior to the commencement. For instance, how are you going to deal with this? Do you have a forensics lab? Or what type of software are you going to use? What type of system are you going to use to get that? What technique are you going to do to actually get a copy of the actual data, without damaging it? So what is your technique going to be? And of course, how did it happen? We need to know more information about how this actual event took place. The investigation phase is actually acquiring that data at that point. And then how are we going to keep the chain of evidence from being tainted in any way? What was the source of the crime? Where did it happen? Where did it come from? What happened? And again, that is only understood by understanding, we did a proper pre-investigative phase. And of course, at the end, we need to create a proper report. And that report needs to be done in such a way that it's understandable. And it can't just be a lot of gobbledygook. It has to be written for. And sometimes, there's just a summary report, as well as a full extended report. How was it? What was your technique? How was the data and confidentiality and integrity maintained? So in the initial phase, we have to create a lab, and these are just some of the steps. The planning and budgeting considerations. Software is not cheap. The better the software, the better the report writing, the more effective it is, no doubt. Physical and structural design considerations, exactly. Is it many devices? Perhaps it was an entire company, and we had to evaluate all the drives. Access to services. We may need access to the detectives that were brought in on the actual crime. What's our work area? Do we have to take drives apart? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes hard drives have to be done. So you need a clean room to do that. Potential heating, ventilation, air conditioning. These all could be factors. The humidity of the room. So it all depends on exactly how to what extent. Sometimes it used to be that people stored things on floppy disk, and then they would destroy the disk. And a good forensic investigator had to be able to put those disks back together to be able to recover information. It's pretty cool the way they used to do that. So digital in using solid state drives and memory disks has changed that a lot. But then it just created its own conundrum, because people will try to smash those type of things up, but yet there are techniques, again, for recovering data, from the actual logic chip. Again, work area considerations, workspace requirement. Do we have internet? What's the lighting? Physical security, more as what kind of a place it is, or fire suppression systems and so on. Human resource considerations, forensic lab licensing, more as these would be the actual accreditation, as well as the type of licensing for the software that we use. Investigation methodology, just a step-by-step process. You have to document the crime scene, how is search and seizure done, how is evidence preserved, how are we acquiring the data analysis once we've acquired it, the case analysis, again, reporting. Reporting is a mix of both having really good software that can help to write the report, as well as some manual editing and appendixes to that, that the software is not going to do for you. And, and as well as testifying as an expert witness. And that has its own phases. There's a pre testifying phase. There's the testifying phase, as well as a post phase there. In our gathering and organization, we need to understand what's appropriate to the investigation. What type of procedures should we do? We need to identify the facts, list all the evidence, list the conclusions. And so there's a consideration has to be given to how we're going to gather and organize our data. We need to give consideration to the report as to, again, presenting the facts in a clear, concise, and written for the appropriate audience. And that's such an important point. And it also shows the maturity and skill of the investigator as well. And so just highlights, right? It should accurately define the details of the incident. Does it convey all the necessary information, okay, in a concise manner? It should be technically sound and understandable to the target audience, okay? And I would, it depends really who you're writing for, but if it was for a hearing, for a court case, then if it's a jury, it has to be presented in a way that the jury can understand. It should be able to withstand legal inspection. They're going to tear into it. And it should adhere to local laws. And this is something really that then you actually work with legal counsel on. So you, as a forensic investigator, you understand the law, but this is really where a forensic lawyer, which are very few competent ones. It's a great area for law. We haven't even touched on areas such as computer crime involving cryptocurrency. Very few people. That's a great area to really get expertise in. All right, so in order to be able to do all this, you may not even work with a hard disk. Or you may, but you need to understand, certainly to pass this exam, you need to have a good understanding of what storage devices are, and how they work, the logical structure of a disk, the booting process of Windows, Linux, Mac operating systems. Certainly Chrome really comes under Linux, and haven't really even talked much about mobile, but you need to understand really as well the boot process of an IoT device. It may be a camera that captures something that was damaged. You're going to have to extract the information from that. I could be just someone had information on a thumb drive and they smashed it to smithereens, drove their car over it, hit it with a hammer, trying to, destroy evidence, maybe torch that thing. Okay. Is it possible? It's possible. It's possible to extract information from it. Some. So we have certain tools. Two of the tools that are used inside the course are autopsy and the sleuth kit, or the TSK. And there are others. So we need to understand the logical structure of this, how files are stored in there, what's the boot sector. In many ways, the disk is very similar in the structure of phonographic record. You need to have an understanding of this as part of what the course will cover. All right. As well as understanding performance, consistency, expandability, compatibility, of the course. Different operating systems have different file systems. Windows is going to be different than Linux. Linux is going to be different, even though Mac is very similar in regards to Linux, built on the BSD file structure, all coming really off of the Unix background. Similar yet different, okay? Different enough that you need to spend time you're working with it. One of the really cool things about the course is, though I'm really giving you the lecture part at this point, there are over 85 labs that allow you to go through and examine disks, examine memory, use tools and techniques for this. And you really need that kind of hands-on work. Okay? So in conjunction with this course, you have a complete lab environment. All you really need is a web browser to get to it. Labs are well developed, great instructions along with it. You'll find that we've come a long way from, like, when this was in version 7, version 8, we didn't have these iLabs. So we used to have to build the lab environments. It was all right, but having the access to iLabs, okay, is great. And normally what happens is you may take the course, you may take the exam, pass the exam, but you have the iLabs to work with, for another 6 months. Usually that's how long the subscription is. So that you can continue to practice and hone your skills, maybe even if you're not really working in the environment yet, okay? We know that machines boot when they start up, right? They go through a boot process. Normally, it starts right from the BIOS of the system. The system BIOS is instructed where to find the operating system on the hard drive, or however it's going to be booting from. Cold boot is starting machine up from off, right? Turn it on, machine boots up. Warm boot would be restarting the machine once it was on. Certain things happen. A warm boot, some things will stay in memory, but when a machine is powered down into the off state, we are definitely going to lose whatever was in RAM. The FAT system, the file allocation table, was one of the first Windows Windows file systems. The FAT system is still around. Normally, when you buy a thumb drive, a small digital drive, USB drive, they'll be formatted in the FAT system. FAT system has some limitations in terms of how many blocks and how much data it can hold. And, of course, they can be reformatted. But even when stuff is reformatted, you can still extract data from them. And so you need to understand how the FAT system is built, and the directory structure of it, okay, as well as the FAT16 and FAT32. You need to understand the Linux file system, how the structure is done there, how a Linux system will boot up, the difference between the user space and the kernel space. The Mac file system, as I say, the Mac file system is still similar in many ways to a Unix system. Mac system being based on the BSD. The interesting about Mac is that most people don't realize that they have a very similar Unix terminal, in the Mac system, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be, GUI driven. So a lot of what is done in forensics can be done, through a command line interface. So Autopsy is a digital forensics platform, and it's a graphic interface to the sleuth kit, the TSK. So those two work hand in hand, work together. So one of the tools that you work with in the course, these things can find all the JPEGs, or all the bitmaps, photos, all the sound files, even if they're stashed away in a hidden directory or in memory, it will search through a system, to find these. Again, you use tools like this on the cloned image and not on the actual real drive itself. File system analysis using the sleuth kit, so we will definitely spend some time playing with that. So data acquisition and duplication. Okay, so how do we get this data? So we need to understand the fundamentals of it, the different, the different ways that we can, different ways that the data is actually in the system. So typically, these are the things that you would go through in this model, right? Different types, different formats, and different methodologies. Logical acquisition. This is going to allow you to capture only certain, like I said, if I were looking just for JPEGs, or some type of particular picture file format, or maybe a sound file format. Okay, or as the example here, maybe I'm looking just for PST files, which would be the Outlook kind of file format, especially if you weren't using Exchange. If you were using Exchange, you would be looking for an OST file format. So you need to know from the get-go what type of mail server that particular person would be using. Okay? Or maybe you need to be getting some files for a RAID server. So you need to know, you need to understand that aspect. Where sparse acquisition, collects fragments of unallocated data. It could be scattered throughout the system. You would be looking for maybe deleted files. A lot of times, the way a system works is that when you delete a file, it only deletes the file allocation entry for it. The file still remains on the disk. This is what gets a lot of people caught, who think that they've deleted the data, and they've emptied the trash bin, but the file is still there. It's there until something writes over it. Okay, so very easy to recover that data. The data acquisition format. So a raw format would be getting a bit by bit collection of that. And often raw format is the way that even backups are done. And, which is another source of way that we can actually forensically get information, right, from the backups. But so its advantage is that it gets everything. And it makes a mirror, it makes a clone of the actual source drive. But it takes time. and you need as much space on the clone as you do on the actual source drive. And proprietary, it could be faster, but it needs to be certified. Okay? It may not work with all the tools that you have. Okay? So sometimes one may have a proprietary format that only works with their investigative tools. And so these are kinds of evaluation, pre-event types of thinking that you need to go through. Get a little of the methodology here, rolling through it, from the start to the end. Right? Need to determine the data, select the data, sanitize the data. Is the computer on? If it is, you can acquire volatile data. By volatile, we simply mean the data that's in memory. There could be important stuff that's there, and once it's turned off, it's gone. So if it was on, let's get it. Okay? If it's off, fine. Okay? You remove the hard disk. Okay? You write protected disk so that you don't make any changes to it. Okay? Otherwise, you would be tainting it. Right? Acquire non-volatile data, which would be non-volatile, would be stuff that's written to disk, right? And so on. Anti-forensics. So that's just like the person I was talking about that races the data. Maybe they're smart enough, that they went in, they deleted everything from the delete bin, okay? And they, unless they actually wipe the disk, and the two ways the disk can be wiped is either by degaussing it. It's a magnetic tool that runs a powerful magnet over the disk and just disrupts it, because a traditional disk with magnetic media, the data is stored in zeros and ones, in a magnetic arrangement. When I run a powerful magnet over it, it's going to totally distort it. Or the DoD wipe is running ones and zeros 7 times over the disk in order to delete it. And even then, there's a possibility of getting something. But these would be things that people would do. And maybe they ran it once. Okay, it's possible to get something from it. Understanding that the data deletion and recycle bin forensics, what's in there, understanding file carving techniques and ways to recover, understanding password cracking, bypassing techniques. Maybe it's in a password protected file, how do we crack that? How do we get beyond that? Understanding how to detect steganography. So steganography is a art of hiding information inside of digital files, like an audio file or a JPEG. You can hide data in the file systems. In the NTFS file system, there is an area called the data stream where you can hide data. And what happened? And you can hide quite a bit of data, and it doesn't change the apparent size of the file. It changes the apparent hash of the file, but not the apparent size. The file will always look the same size. And so there are ways that people try to obfuscate, and we need to understand that. Artifact wiping, overwriting data, metadata detection. Okay? We know that when we take a photo, a digital photo, that there's metadata stored in there. Okay? Encryption as well. You need to understand what types of encryption, can it be decrypted? Is there encryption key for it? Very all important areas, and we would cover that in this module. Overview of anti-forensics countermeasures and the tools that one would use for this. What is anti-forensics? Right now, basically, it's the techniques that you would do to prevent somebody from tracking you. Okay, we call it covering your tracks, and that's what you would do. You have to think like a criminal in order to avoid detection. Okay? For instance, it's always when a hack happens, we say, "Hey, was it China or Russia or Turkey or whatever?" And it's always difficult. Well, probably, and the reason is because they hide their tracks. Okay, they go through the Tor dark web, and it's very, very difficult to really nail it down 100%. And we are at the top of the hour. Okay? So Leela, should we take a break at this point?
Yeah, I think that this is a perfect time to take a break. We'll take a 10-minute break. And while we are doing that break, we are going to take a moment. We're going to launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in some upcoming webinars and other events. So if you can just take a quick moment to answer this poll, we will be meeting back here in 10 minutes and getting started. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. We are going to go ahead and wrap up our break and pass the time right back over to Tom. Thank you, everyone who participated in that survey. We really appreciate the feedback. Tom?
Hey, I hope it was good. I hope we got some good reviews here. So back on with the show. So we were talking about anti-forensic techniques. Deleting files. Somebody might password protect. I explained a little bit about steganography. Steganography is also a great way for covert conversations. It's very possible for terrorist groups to communicate through what is a seemingly innocent Facebook family photo type thing. Data hiding, trail obfuscation, artifact wiping, encryption, program packers, minimizing your footprint. Just trying to, by that, trying to not leave a trail. I mean, think of I guess in the old westerns, how you have an Indian tracker who would try to follow the horse print. Well, people leave little breadcrumbs, and you want to, if you were trying to be a good anti-forensic agent, you would try to avoid these things, and you have to think of it from that point of view. It's almost like very similar to the way we would in ethical hacking. In order to beat a hacker, you have to think like a hacker. In order to beat a burglar, you have to think like a burglar. Yeah. How would someone get into a building or into a structure? So very, very important kind of reverse thinking. So in the development of the countermeasures, we train and educate and try to understand how to do these things, right? I suppose imposing strict laws against the illegal use of anti-forensic tools, it's never going to happen. Understanding anti-forensic techniques, pretty much I gave you the gamut of it. You do spend some time in the labs doing that type of stuff. Here's just some of the tools: steganography studio, mask maker, deep sound, data stash, WB Stego is another Stego tool. People hide things in certain ways, shapes, and forms, so that it can't be found. I've learned that there is no limit to the creativity of the criminal mind. No limit. If that could just be put in, well, I guess, for the criminal, it is being put into a productive mode, isn't it? They're getting away with it. So this module is typically Windows forensics. What makes Windows forensics any different than Linux forensics? One, Windows certainly holds a market share. They're in industry. Windows outperforms or outnumbers Mac. Myself, I run an MSP here in Philadelphia, and I would say 95% of my clients run Windows shops, compared to 5% running Mac shops. Okay, there's a little Linux mixed here and there, but for the most part, we really come across Linux in the web world. I actually manage 4 websites, and they're all on Linux web servers, all Apache servers. And so you need to understand really how that structure is if you're going to do any forensics there. And I do a bit of work that way, whereas websites get defaced all the time. So how did it happen? Where did it come from? Who did it? And people want to know that stuff. And so understand the collection of volatile and non-volatile information. What's the difference, right? Volatile is turn the computer off, it's gone. And non-volatile, it's written to disk. And understanding Windows memory and registry analysis. More or less, generally when a machine is compromised, there will be some trace in the registry. If I had a pre-registry set up prior, then I could compare that to the registry that I have now, and I would see the differences, and that would be an area to kind of look at. Right? Understand how to examine the cache, the cookie, and history recorded. Again, this is a great thing that parents do in order to understand, what their children are doing on their phones and on their computers. It's also a great way that marketers track us, by examining our cookies and caches, right? Understanding how to examine Windows files and metadata. So that's probably the most important aspect of it. But typically we do need to know that. Of course, web browsers are web browsers. They work pretty much the same, across the board. So I'll give you a little idea, right? So we need tools for getting into the memory. The Process Explorer, one of the Win interns programs, downloadable from Microsoft. It makes a much better Process Explorer than, say, does your actual system tools, your task manager. It's a little more detailed, and it's great for really looking at families of processes. And along with the process dump, process dumper, these are all great tools. So process dumper comes with a built-in virus total support. So if you don't know what virus total is, it's a website that you can upload what you think is a malware, and it will evaluate the malware, where it came from. Sometimes virus writers use virus total to check to see if there's any known signatures in there. Because most of the time, it's there's something in the malware itself, in the virus, the worm, the Trojan, whatever it is, that can identify it. And that's typically how anti-virus tools or antivirus will be able to determine that your machine has been compromised, by checking these signatures. So collecting the non-volatile information. Non-volatile just remains unchanged, right? Emails, word processing. So typically on the hard drive, could be, there's a swap file slack space. These are usually where things go in the memory dumps. And could be a DVD. A lot of times people will root through the trash, okay? I mean, the DVD is still around, but it's going the way of the phonograph. Okay? And thumb drives are much more prevalent today. Really, people store stuff on their, phones are great storage device. Okay? And it does not have a hard drive. It has definitely digital memory. Cache cookie history analysis, right? So there's always a history of these things. Have people cleared it, and even after they clear it, there still is remnants of it somewhere in memory. Until that machine is rebooted. File analysis, timestamps. These are ways that we understand. We can track down when something has happened, when an event has happened. Certainly logs as well. These are important things to be able to look at. You need to know where to find the logs, of course. It's going to vary between Windows and Linux and Mac, but the same stuff, in a sense, it's the same. There is volatile and non-volatile. There's a file system analysis looking for photos, sound files, video, documents. In the same way, you may have some different extensions depending upon the type of tool, but you would know right from evaluating the type of software on the machine as to what type of files you should be looking for. Right? Again, they'll work pretty much the same. The hardware is the same for all the operating systems and the way they work. And as well, like I say, Mac is different, but not that much different. That the principle still works the same. What kind of volatile data should we get, right? It's not, volatile data is lost when the machine is turned off, as we say, right? So we could hopefully construct a timeline by getting that data, before it's turned off. Right? Host name, uptime, network information, open ports, events, what's loaded into the kernel, the core, what they call ring 0, what's mounted, the device, what types of devices are mounted, what files were open at the time, what processes were running at the time, what's changed over the course of time. And the swap area is just areas where things are kept in memory, and the stack and the heap. Non-volatile system information, kernel information, user accounts, who's logged in, system logs, user history, hidden files and directories, suspicious information. It's always nice to have a baseline to kind of go back to. So if you have something prior that you could compare what is now, you could really make a better comparison. So comparisons are very, very important. Again, the sleuth kit game, but there are some commands as well, command line tools that are used. Of course, you need to become somewhat familiar with command line in Linux and again in Unix. PS list plugin, list all processes. Okay, but they're this again is a Python command. Yep. So you need to have a little bit of understanding. Having an understanding of languages and so on is you will work a little bit with Python. It's not really the goal of the course to learn Python, okay, but having the ability to read Bash in Python, to be able to code in it is a big, big help, because there's some great tools that you could use in Python. So you will spend some time in Mac Forensics, okay, doing the same thing. Network forensics, okay. So network forensics is what's going on in the network, more or less. Did it enter into the network from outside? Or perhaps there's something nefarious going on the network itself. And so a lot of the ways that we determine that the system is compromised is by what's going in and out, the ingress and egress of data. How many encrypted channels are there, and who are those encrypted channels to? So we want to know who we're talking to. If you were to look at what your mobile device is doing right now, it would freak you out. And because that device is chatting with 20, 30 providers out there. Just little keep alive messages. I mean, if you have to have go-to meeting on your mobile device, it's constant. If you don't shut that down, it's constantly checking in, going, hey, you got anything for me? Your mail server, hey, you got anything for me? If it's compromised, it's going to be talking to a command and control server. And so understanding what's going on in the network is very, very important. And so we will spend some time understanding what happens in a network. Logging, what's going on, event correlation concepts, one is how those, and a lot of times what happens is our indicator compromises that our event correlation is corrupt. And somebody got access to our network or to a machine and changed, wiped the logs out, or just distorted the actual recorded time. And the indicators of compromise from network logs, as to what's going on, who's talking, there are better tools than just looking at the logs, such as SIM, or a system information event tool that is taking the logs and then making correlations there. It's one of the best ways to know that you have something nefarious going on in your network. So yeah, but things we want, that source of security incidents, the path of intrusion, how did it come? Is it still going on your network? Like I said, it could be a printer or some other IoT type device. And people are always, I think their minds are blown when I do something like I show the DNS list or the DHCP list from the server that's giving out IP addresses. And all of a sudden they start seeing Sally's Fitbit and John's iPhone, and you go, all these things are on the network. Yeah, because they come in, they may not have privy to important files, or they may. But everybody wants to connect their mobile device to the Wi-Fi. It used to be to save minutes. I don't know why, but it's not my role to tell users what to do. My role is to find out what's going on. Make suggestions. Most common types of things: eavesdropping. Somebody listening. Are they in on a Wi-Fi channel or some other type of wireless? Could be Zigbee. For instance, you have a Ring doorbell camera is running Zigbee, so that's how its wireless is working. Did data get modified? We have somebody spoofing IP addresses, pretending to be somebody else. Are we getting our service knocked out, our availability being killed? Man in the middle, which is somebody between me and the web server, or B and the database server. Packet sniffing, which means somebody is listening on the network and trying to see if there's any clear text data going back and forth. Enumeration, just somebody trying to find out who's on the network, what kind of shares are open. This is typically what happens when a worm gets on the network. It immediately searches out all the shares. Session hijacking, buffer overflow, email inflection, malware attacks, password-based attacks, router attacks. Is the router been compromised? You check the CISA, or you check for any kind of exploits that have come out today, or just warnings. You'll see that consumer routers are always on the list. And by consumer router, I mean the ones that you got from your ISP. They're not the most formidable types of devices out there. Wireless networks, as I said, but it don't have to be, when we say wireless, it doesn't be Wi-Fi. It could be, today we have a lot of different types. We have lo-fi, which are used in industrial. So if your job's really trying to understand how the attack came in, you have to understand really what type of wireless communication is your industry using. Okay, important stuff to know. So we spent some time in this module. Event correlation, what else? How are events aggregated? Are they masked in any way? What's the terminology? You know, it's just even the way is it logged. You know, it was the year before the day before the year. This happens a lot actually in CCTV. So, which is another form of forensics that you need to be able to pull back the event in a video format, which was another type of a log. In IOC, so this is important, and you really got to keep track of unusual outbound network traffic or unusual inbound network traffic, and unusual URLs. What's the string in the actual address in your web browser? User agent strings, login abnormalities. Okay, are you tracking that? Are people logging in? Are we getting a lot of mislogs? Okay. Not only on the network in the Active Directory or the LDAP directory, but also on the web servers, okay? Or on your Salesforce.com or your Azure, your Amazon Web Services, all the different software as a service that you use. Number of requests for the same file, okay? And not only that, right? What files have been loaded on the thumb drives? Okay, what's going on? Are people allowed to use plug-in drives? Okay? Can they plug in anything? Okay, did something get loaded to their Fitbit? What was loaded off? Okay, unless you're tracking these things, you don't know. So devices, track them. Unusual ports, and so there's a listing of what kind of ports malware uses. Okay, what are the normal ports and what are ports that aren't? And even then, it might be a normal port that's using an abnormal protocol. Okay? You don't have to run FTP on an FTP port. Okay? Sniffer. So a sniffer would be something like Wireshark or T-Shark or even TCP dump. It could be a command line or a GUI type tool that is listening to everything that's on the network. Okay? We use them for performance so that we know that when there's a slow network, is it the application or is it some network device? But at the same time, we can tell what kind of, if somebody is sniffing on the network, because they have to put their network interface card into promiscuous mode. But we can tell an awful lot. And so you will spend some time working with sniffers, okay, to become capable with them. What else we have? Well, So web attacks, can jump past that. So as we say, more and more what we're doing today really is using web servers or what we say SaaS, or software as a service. If you're using Office 365 or even Google apps, you're using a web server or a web application for communication. You may have files uploaded there. You may be passing files back and forth. You may be sharing files, okay, using Dropbox, okay, Box. Let's face it, at least 50% of what you're doing, if not more, is based this way. And the trend is that we'll do more and more. How do we perform web application forensics? What are the different, the IIS is Microsoft's version of a web server. Apache Web Servers is the Unix version of a web server. We don't see much Apple web services out there. So, and again, it would be a way. Apple's not into being a web service, although there are some things that do work that way. I would say you're looking probably 70-30 share. 30% of web servers out there are internet information services, okay? And 70% of them out there are Apache. Okay? And a lot of different versions of them. I would say just about any website, you could run them, but just about any website you go to, you're going to find it more than likely going to be Apache. Still, you as the person taking the course, you as a person taking the exam to become certified, and you as the person that is doing the actual forensic investigation need to know the difference in how to detect and investigate the attacks. Challenges, well, distributed nature web applications. For instance, the web server may be in one box, the web application in another computer box, and the database in another, and they may not even be in the same location. They could be distributed across large geographical area. Limited, no downtime. Yeah. Problem is that when you get to this stuff, who owns the web application, and what are your rights to investigation or electronic investigation? If it's hosted at Amazon Web Services, what do they allow you? On the other hand, if you're hosting stuff there, and there's a federal or a state local investigation, what rights do they have? Okay, and can they shut you down in terms of the other investigation if they suspect it? Okay, there's a lot that goes on here, so it's a really big area, and we do our best to cover it. But because the major gist here is for us to be able to be a forensic investigator into web services, right? But you need to know how these things work. What goes on? Tracing back is difficult in case of reverse proxies and anonymizers. And when I said earlier, it's China, okay? Well, that's why they don't know, because it's very difficult to trace back, because there's this whole concept of reverse proxies where they jump through. If you watch CSI, I'm sure, and they hop through machines, to anonymize the tracks, to erase their tracks so that they can't be found. It's a difficult process. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it takes a lot of investigation, and it takes a bit of trapping to be able to do it. I'm a big martial art fan. In Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, his method of martial arts, okay, there was a series of ways of attacking. It was a direct attack, an indirect attack, and a combination of attack. But the most sophisticated was the attack by draw. Okay, it means you leave an opening, so you allow the person to attack that opening so that you can then defend against it. So one of the best ways that we can do in terms of trying to understand how people attack is to actually leave a honeypot, or leave an opening that they go after, and so that we can see what their behavior is and where we can trap them. And much better way to understand the behavior. Indicators of a web attack: you're unable to access services. Okay? Your page looks funny. Somebody put a big. I had a customer that called me up, and their web page got hacked. A competitor had put up a whole different picture and everything. And after I looked at it, it turned out that actually the competitor didn't deface their website really. The competitor waited until their domain name expired, and then bought the name, and then just put up whatever website they wanted, because they owned the name then. And so it happens. Leakage of sensitive data. How do you know that you leaked the sensitive data? I had a customer once call me and go, hey, some of my personal information is out on these sites. We have no idea how it was. And it turned out that their tech guy had opened up the FTP ports. And somebody just cracked the password and then stole their FTP data. A, don't use FTP. B, don't use simple passwords. Okay. C, use two-factor authentication. Okay, case solved. A URL is redirecting to incorrect sites as cross-domain reflex. It can happen. Web page defacements, like I said, usually slow network performance. Okay, rebooting of the server. These are all kinds of, these are all good signs that's going on. Okay, what? That's how your computer actually works every day. That's the funny thing about it. You could be, by compromise. Okay, threats. So it's a big area. And we're not sucking up too much time. Cookies can get poisoned and can be reused. And SQL injections, system query language. This is the way a lot of sites and a lot of applications, and they're not all tested well. Okay, it accounts for a good 20% of web application exploits. Injection flaws, somebody just plugging stuff in. You got a reply box, information box. Somebody plugs stuff in there, and they're able to inject something into the site. Could be the application itself. You can inject something. Okay. Cross-site request forgeries. That's when one site can be manipulated to go to another site, or that you think you're logging into one site, but you actually get sent over to another site. Or there's a number of ways that type of stuff happens. So directory traversal. People get access to the web application, and somehow by manipulating the URL, they're able to get into your file system. Okay? Unvalidated input, simply there's no limit to what you can type in. Instead of, it's saying put in your first name, you could put a unlimited string of system query language, looking for file names and so on. Cross-site scripting, sensitive data exposure, parameter form tampering. This is how people change the prices of things, denial of service, broken access control, security misconfiguration, information leakage, proper error handling, buffer overflow. This will shut a machine down if there aren't limits to it. Insufficient logging, broken authentication, log tampering. In the course, you spend some time doing all these. Log tampering is a big one because it's harder to track as to what happens and really build a dossier on how this actually went. Cross-site scripting. So this would be some of the ways that it's done. We won't go too big into it. So in module 10, we have a dark web forensics. So the dark web, we hear so much about it. Okay, so it's an area of the internet where criminals tend to hang out and sell their wares. One could buy illegal firearms, one could buy illegal drugs, one could buy a hacking kit, could buy a ransomware kit that they could then deploy. Most don't know how to get to it. To get to it, you need to have a Tor browser. There are different ways to do it. What we're looking for here is not so much searching the dark web so that we can buy illegal things or to understand the behavior of those who utilize the dark web, but understand we do want to understand the behavior of those that are using the dark web for various criminal activities. And by that, I mean, have they left any traces on their computer? And so the extent of this module is just to do that. And we need to understand the dark web, what the Tor browser is, and then how to actually collect and analyze memory dumps to come up with some evidence that a person actually did that. So TOR represents the onion routers. So they use nodes. Nobody's really sure, who developed. It's kind of like, blockchain, who is the real Satoshi Nakamoto? Was it a person or a group of people? It's still kind of wrapped in mystery. But there's an entry relay where you establish your where you actually access a middle relay where data is transferred in an encrypted fashion. Okay, so it's not previewable there. And then an exit relay where either the data is going to be dumped or is going to be sourced. This is typically where people tend to get caught doing criminal activities, usually in an entry or an exit relay. So here's some other tools that are used for examining. The FTK imager is a great one for it. Access Data provides that. You can actually get a community subscription to FTK by asking for it. We definitely deal with both of these in the course in the labs. Like I said, there's over 85 labs. So yes, you would be searching memory, looking for things that would be relevant to the onion routers. All right, so that brings us to email crimes. And I think this is a kind of a pretty big area because there's probably more machines are compromised via email. Email lives a long time. Most people use email as their filing system, so it's a good place to certainly track. I hear from people all the time going, I'm looking for emails from, I don't know, 2011, or 2013, from 10 years ago. So they may have it in an archive somewhere. They may have a bunch of PST files that are stored on the machine somewhere. They're not sure how to get into them. But it's a rich source of investigation. And if there's some activity, some criminal activity went on, it's probably in there in the email. So we need to understand email systems. And there's a lot of them. And there's some legacy systems and like post office, like PopMail and POP3, IMAP, as well as more industrial strength, like Exchange. There's Exchange Online and there's Exchange Local. So it all depends on the kind of email system you have. You need to understand the email system if you're going to be the investigator. What are the components involved in email communication? Well, it's kind of like a web service. It's just a different type of application. And you need to understand the parts of it. We used to, in Exchange servers, we would then, peruse the logs to see, how activity went on. Now today, you peruse the logs in exchange online. Okay? To understand the parts of the email message, the headers, the base, the body of the message, where did it come from? So the headers tell us a lot as to has that been relayed through someone? Has it been has it been a direct message? What was the server it came from? And understand more about email crime investigations and steps, right? So the email system, right, sends and receives mail, right? And the client allows you to view and compose messages. I myself, I'm an Outlook user. A lot of people do. Some people use Thunderbird. Some people use the mail client that's built right into Windows. Some like to use a web browser. I know people that still use AOL, and they like to use AOL via the web browser. A lot of people like Gmail, they use the web browser. A lot of people like Yahoo, they use a web browser. Some people just have the email that their web provider provides for them. It's pretty crappy email, but yet they do it, and you need to know exactly how that client server architecture works. Email sent from the client to the central server, which then routes the mail to its intended destination. It all is worked over the SMTP, Simple Mail Transport Protocol. So our components are the mail user agent, the mail transfer agent, and the mail delivery agent. Right? So what is the email client that I'm using? Like I said, Outlook, Thunderbird. Thunderbird is kind of cool client. Web-based, hits you all those, right? So we know what that is, but they're browser-based versus a standalone client. The transfer agent, what is the mail server that's accepting them? Who's talking to you? Send mail, postfix, and so on. And the mail delivery agent is an application responsible for receiving the email message from the message transfer agent. Okay? The SMTP server, these are types of components, right? So most common, Windows has a built-in SMTP server. Most websites have a built-in SMTP server, and some type of, like WordPress will have a plugin for it. And then that would connect to your transfer agent. Typically, they listed on port 25, but as I said, ports are not always the same. You may, oftentimes, depending upon the strength of the mail server, I might use port 26 for a local printer that allows sending scanned documents to email. POP3, one of the most common. POP3, for the most part, is insecure email. It is clear text. So POP3, if it was running port 110, it certainly would be clear text. It's frowned upon today. You don't want to use clear text email. It's too easily intercepted. IMAP, more popular. It's what you're going to find. Probably more people using it. However, like upon a lot of penetration tests that I do, I find that people don't realize that they're using these mail servers and still sending, like they had encryption enabled on their computers, but not on their mobile devices. Okay, so that they were, getting on Wi-Fi at Starbucks and sending even clear text IMAP email. So important stuff, because that could be an area of data leak right there. We'll have an introduction to email crime investigation, more or less the types of crimes that you go through and what you need to do. And the steps. So yeah, you would have to actually seize the computer and email accounts. Okay, if it was and there will be some stuff in memory, of course. I mean, if you're using email via web browser, then you're going to have a history in the browser itself, to a degree. How do you acquire the email data? Well, if it was a Microsoft Exchange PST file, or a Microsoft Outlook PST file, non-Exchange, then you could mount that and read that mail. If it was an OST, then it's going to have some provisions. You need a special tool for that. And then you would have to be able to peruse through those email messages using some type of search function, perhaps looking for documents that would be in there, or attachments and so on, or it's just search terms. Looking through the email headers, you can learn the source and destinations, both the vanity name, the URLs, as well as the IP addresses of the source and destination, senders, receivers, and servers. Tools for analyzing. Email Pro is a pretty good one, but recovering deleted email messages. For instance, a lot of times people will delete them in Exchange, but we can pull them back to a degree, within a degree. Again, there will be in a deleted file area on the hard drive. If it was deleted 6 months ago, probably overwritten. If it was deleted last week, good chance of recovering it. Okay, so you need to know if somebody says, "Gee, can you recover that deleted email?" Okay, so you need to know the time span so that you can give a yes, no, maybe, what probability of it. So examining the message, again here, they're looking for the sense of urgency in it. Checking links, or, the link would be in the history as well. Malware. So malware is another interesting area, because how do machines become compromised? So your investigation would have led you to either the attack came in via some network exploit, perhaps it was a service that was running on the network, like FTP, that person was able to guess the simple, 5-character password with some type of a password cracking tool. Then from that point, they were able to get into the Etsy shadow directory and be able to find all the usernames and passwords, and they were able to exploit the entire system. Or perhaps they send them an email, they click the link, and that caused a download of a backdoor, what we call remote access tool. And it could be a remote access tool that is well known. There's a lot of rats, as we call them, that are whitelisted. Dropbox, not Dropbox, but TeamViewer. TeamViewer commonly used by people who will purport to scare you into letting them on your machine. And then they plant some malware on the machine. You know, you may get a pop-up that goes, your machine has been infected. Or it may say a message like, your machine, we noticed that you have been perusing pornography websites, and we've turned your camera on. We've noticed you doing some naughty things. All kinds of scare word type things. And asking you to call a number or to click a link, and then the dialogue will lead you into letting this person load a TeamViewer or some type of remote access tool on your machine so they could clean your machine up. Of course, at the same time they're cleaning the machine up, they can download. Those tools allow the downloading of certain tools. So that would be only, one way that somebody would get malware, onto the system. So what are the techniques they use to spread malware? It's important to understand the psychology and philosophy that they're using, the tools and techniques that they're using. Then we'll spend some time understanding the forensic fundamentals, the types of malware analysis. What types of malware are there? And there's a whole category. We could spend the rest of the day just going over the categories of malware and what they do and how they do it. So we do a dynamic and a static analysis of malware. The static analysis really would be what do we see actually on the machine itself. Maybe it loaded something into programs. For instance, it's not so much malware when you get adware, but a lot of times you'll look either in programs loaded and installed, or into add-ons and browser plugins. Maybe something that was installed there. So that static analysis allows us to see that, oh, somebody did load something in there. That gives them, a foothold into your system and allows us to understand that. Analysis of suspicious Word documents. So what's going on here? In fact, Microsoft has made a big change recently in their Office allowance of running any kind of Visual Basic tool. So they just turn it off by default. So they could run macros in a Word doc, in an Excel file. And that macro could do all kinds of things. That macro could start up other programs. It could download something. It has tremendous amount of capability. A macro running on a web server like IIS could actually then load some type of other program on the server and turn that into an actual spamming machine. What they're trying to do is to actually turn the computer into a spamming machine. And a lot of times that's exactly what happens. Your computer gets turned into a bot, which becomes part of a large bot network. In itself, it can be sending, it can be doing scanning of other computers or sending emails out after it stole your email list, or combine that with somebody else's stolen email list and started sending things out. So we want to know, what's going on there with suspicious Word docs. Dynamic malware analysis is looking what's going on under the surface, what's in the registries itself, not the Windows registry, but in the actual memory registries. And we can tell from signatures in there what's going on. We use programs like volatility to be able to detect not only that there's malware, but what type of malware. And not only that, what's the brand and the source of it, so that we can, better understand the behavior of that group, because different groups different malware groups, whether out of China, the Panda group, or they're out of Russia, the Bear group, or they're out of China, North Korea. They all follow certain kind of behavioristic patterns. So that allows us to analyze the malware behavior and what's going on in real time, and gives a better idea of how that is not only affecting the machine that we're in, but it's also affecting the machine that we're associated with, whether we're connected with machines over a wide area network or connected with machines on a local network. And that allows us now to see exactly how that malware actually behaved and how many other machines have been infected. Or am I part of a large botnet? So we need tools and techniques for this. Ideally, it's best to have these analysis tools in place ahead of time rather than after the fact. But sometimes that's what the forensic investigator is brought in, after the fact. Just some components of malware, some things you'll need to know, and you'll spend some time studying, and spending some lab time on, cryptors. They just encrypt and obfuscate the software itself. Downloader is you may get an initial beacon that then can actually contact the downloader, and then you will pull something down. Okay, so the downloader might happen after you let that person that's on your machine with TeamViewer. Then they have the ability to download some stuff. The dropper, is another tool that installs malware files after it's been manipulated. The files it might be like a game or some free software that you thought, you were going to get away without paying a license for, but actually it was packed with a Trojan, and you're not getting away with anything. So, as my mother said when I was a young lad, there is no such thing as a free lunch, and especially when it comes to. There are some great free tools out there that come with no tags, but for the most part, be suspicious of free. Exploit is simply when your machine has been compromised. It's what does the exploit. Okay? An injector might be pushing some code into other processes. If you looked in your file manager, you would see a really weird looking process running, but an injector will actually move into something like clock or your notepad or something like that. It's just they're known to obfuscate them and put them somewhere. And obfuscators is ways of concealing the code. It's going to use ways that the computer understands, but you don't see it, or the tools and techniques that you're using looking for malware can't read. It may be a timing type thing. It may be impacting something that can escape the sandbox. A sandbox will look at really weird stuff on your machine for about 5 minutes, and then it'll let it go if it doesn't do anything. If the malware is set to only operate after 6 minutes, then sandboxing is not going to work. Payloads, malicious code, fileless malware. So types of malware that don't write any file to the disk, use only approved Windows tools for installation and execution. It circumvents the security programs and application whitelisting process. And so it's going to be, it could be something that it might run in memory, okay, but certainly it's not going to be stored to disk. That's for sure. So in order to be a good forensic investigator, you need to have a malware analysis lab. So what kind of machine are you going to use? How is that machine going to be? If you'll be working with malware, you better be isolated from a network. So it is recommended to use a virtual machine. Virtual machines run they run on top of host machines. You'll spend a little time looking at virtual environments. You're not going to spend too much because it's really the domain of the cloud security professional and cloud professional, cloud performance professional. But you need to understand, so you need to know a little bit about everything in order to be effective with this. Okay, so in running and building a dedicated lab, you need to make a choice of what is your virtualization software going to be. I like VirtualBox. I would run it over VMware. Again, here's a case where I'm going to contradict myself because VirtualBox is free and VMware is a paid tool. VMware has some great capabilities. Parallels, again, a paid tool. There are others as well. Hyper-V is Microsoft's use. Hyper-V makes a great production tool, but for the type of stuff we're doing, that's my choice. And I choose VirtualBox because it's very light, very effective, very easy to run, really intuitive, and that's my reason for it, not because it's free. And I trust it. But the importance of using a virtual environment is that it allows you to isolate it. So when you have a virtual machine running in a virtual environment, you can push the files to it, but take it off the network. Or you can build a little network, and you can have machines interact with each other, but don't interact with the internet or interact with the host machine. Oftentimes, I use a virtual machine when someone requests the evaluation of malware. For instance, they'll get a funky email. They're not sure about it. It raises a red flag to them. They'll forward the email to me, and I'll evaluate it in a virtual machine. Open it up, see what it does. Does it interact with any processes on the virtual machine? Is it trying to make some system calls? Is it trying to make a call out to the internet? So it allows me to easily inspect it without any danger and any compromise. So very, very important type stuff. So you need, go through these steps in order to prepare a test bed for malware analysis. You really need, not only is this a lab for forensic investigation, even further for malware investigation. So you may be just a malware forensic investigator and not a pornographic or image file investigator. There's so many areas that you could actually work in. Yeah. System behavior analysis, registry artifacts, these are all areas that you want to be looking for. Startup programs, network behavior analysis, and boom. That is it for me. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did getting this out. It is a lot of fun. Actually, it's this kind of detective learning is fun. I mean, I enjoy it because I like solving puzzles. Okay, so that's why I'm kind of into this game. But hopefully you got some questions about this. And Leela,
Hey, I'm here. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Right on the button, huh?
Sorry, what was that?
I said right on the button. 12:15.
Well, perfect. We really, like, as always, you just have a wealth of knowledge and we love having you with us. We are going to do a question and answer session in just a moment here. But before we do, I would like to take a moment and give the presentation rights over to Sam Patel. He is our inside sales manager. He's going to introduce some of our some of our promotions and webinar related courses. I'm getting all tongue tied. Sam, are you with us?
Hey, Leela, thank you so much.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, pleasure. First of all, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Leela, for making me the presenter. And thank you so much, Tom, basically, for this informative training session. And thanks for all the attendees who have participated in that. And we are really great that we are having this session. So basically, my name is Sam. And as Leela introduced to me, thanks to her, that I look after the inside sales department of NetCom. I'm here to take you through one of the best subscription models which our NetCom has, which is NetCom Plus. Let me showcase what NetCom Plus is to you. You have to just go to our website, which is www.netcomlearning.com. You can see a thing called promotion. You can just scroll down and you can see a thing called NetCom Plus. As the name suggests, it's one of the best subscription model, as I say. Let me tell you why. You can explore the world of unlimited training subscription. When I say this, you are getting 24/7 access to unlimited virtual instructor led program. When I say virtual instructor led program, these are these kind of webinars and the training session where you get to interact with your trainers and you can get your queries resolved then and there itself. So these kind of training you will be part of. At e-learning session and on-demand IDs, basically the labs and everything, you will be having the access to it. And the business training for 12 months. So this subscription, when you take, you will have the authority to take any training and you have the validity of 12 months with you, 365 days with you. NetCom Plus include over 500 courses across various domains and exclusively access to our learning portal, which is NetCom 365. The most important thing is that in this NetCom Plus, you can learn at your own pace. You can track the progress, how much you have covered, what things you need to know more. You have various kind of simulation and test over there where you can check yourself. You can attend n number of VILT classes, which is the instructor-led classes, and you can get access to exclusive resource. And NetCom Plus, why we say we are authorized with various certifying bodies. We are the gold partner with Microsoft, AWS, Adobe, and the training which webinar which was going on, which was given by Tom, basically CHFI is a part of EC Council certifying body. So you can also take, like I said, 500 courses. All the courses which comes under EC Council, you can participate in that. You can take the training of it on this particular subscription. You'll get a 12-month of access, 24/7 rapid skill development. You can learn, practice, and apply the skills learned at your own pace. So as I say, it's the thing which will give you everything. Basically, if you are working in any technology, that technology course you can take. You can upgrade yourself, upskill yourself. You can take the version which you want, and you can go for the additional version once you complete that. And this all come at a price of $2,999 per subscription. But if we also have an offer for your organization, if your organization provide 10 learners to us, then though the price will get reduced to 2,499. So each subscription will be 2,499. So you get a price benefit there as well. So as the name suggests, experience more purchasing power, access over 500 courses less than the price of one. Each and every, like you can see here, if you select Adobe, all the courses which comes under Adobe you can find here, and you can take all this training within the 12 months of time. You can just take the training of Acrobat fundamentals, captive essential. All these will be under you. You don't have to pay anything additional for this course. You have to just pay this amount and you have the access of all the courses which comes under Adobe as a vendor. Similarly of Cisco as well, and EC Council, all the courses will be under your belt. So basically just go for this subscription and you get the entire knowledge of that particular certification body. Thank you so much, Leela and Tom, for giving me an opportunity to provide this information. This is what I wanted to inform, and I think you guys have enjoyed the session. We are
Yes.
just the call and email away. We'll be more than happy to assist you with this subscription, and we will definitely will like to be a part of your lifelong learning journey. Thank you so much. Yes, Leela, over to
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you so much. And really quick, is there a e-certificate given for this webinar today, Sam?
I think Ben will be the right person to answer that.
Mm,
We have Ben.
I'm
We'll be
not sure.
providing the e-certificate, and also this recording will also be available to them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But
Wonderful. Okay, then we'll go ahead and get into our other questions now. And if you do have questions, go ahead and get those in, because we are kind of low on time and we want to get to all your questions, but once we do get through them, we will go ahead and sign off. So our first question, Tom, is, are there any recommended prerequisites for the CHFI course?
Oh, good question. Yes, if you have an understanding in networking, web application, it's ideal to have a background in computers. Really, if you understand how a computer functions, these are all really advantageous. Okay? And I might add that EC Council has also just came out with a digital forensics essentials course, which could actually be a pre-course to this, which I would say is meant for entry level. So you really would see NetCom and Sam, about that, but there's a possibility right there. If you don't, you have a background, it's really a professional level course. But if you don't have a background, hey, you might consider taking the essentials course first. So.
Thank you. And then our next one, and I'm not sure if these are specific to you or if they're more up Sam's alley, is are there any free or discounted courses on NetCom Plus which we can take in order to provide a foundation in cybersecurity?
definitely we can work out on that, but for that you can reach out to our learning consultant and to us, so that we can take your request on detail and we can showcase what all benefits you'll be getting, and accordingly we can provide that.
And what would be the best email to reach out to us with?
You can reach out to my email ID. Let me share that here.
Are you just going to pop that in the chat?
Yes, in the chat.
Okay, perfect. And then another one is there a monthly plan for the subscription? I think that they mean like, can you pay as you go?
Presently, we do not have like that. We do go for the subscription model for 365 days. The reason of that, let me give a brief of it, is that if the person is taking a training, but he does not find that training, he was, because of some or other reason, he's not able to attend the training, even if he has registered that, he gets another chance to participate on that training. For that, we have that 365 days window. But in monthly, if some or other factor, if the person is not able to do it, he has to again repurchase it. So that is the reason for which you have kept it the subscription model for 12 months.
Okay. If that answered your question, then awesome. If not, feel free to clarify further. Our next question we have is, what are some job roles for a certified hacking forensic? I think that's a good question, because I know when you search jobs, everybody calls things just a slightly different name as well. So it's good to know what those actual roles are.
Well, forensic computer analyst, computer forensic criminal investigator, intelligence technology analyst, disaster recovery expert, cryptographer, crypto analyst, computer crime investigator. Some of these will be terms that will go by different names. A police department may call it something different. But you could work locally. Every police department has needs for forensic investigators, whether it's on local, state, or federal level. A digital crime specialist, security consultant, malware analyst, like just that one area. And a lot of times it's broken down into different areas, such as because today a forensic analyst is going to specialize in certain areas. You might be more crime scene related. There might be more looking for hidden files. You might be the type that more malware oriented. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's such a thorough answer. Let's see. We have time for just a few more questions. So if you do have any more, get them in the questions box. We have someone wanting to know, how long is the course?
Oh, it is a 5-day course. Usually, a boot camp type course would be 4 days, action-packed 4 days. 8 hours a day, of course. Day 5 would be review in the morning and usually test in the afternoon. But not always. Depends on how the training company will structure it. So some may actually do day 5 and just really review and do labs. The case is that you could there's enough labs right in the course itself that you could spend 5 days just working the practical labs themselves. So. Yep.
Thank you.
Need that much time.
And how hard is the exam? And is there any practical part to it?
Ooh, good one. There is no practical part to the exam. You definitely need to crack the books to take the exam. 120 questions. You got four hours to take the exam. You need a 70% passing rate, like in most exams. So yeah, you need to know your stuff. Definitely, it's not if you take the course, practice the labs, you definitely have a good shot at passing the exam.
Awesome. And what about during the course? Is there any actual practical lab exercises, any hands-on learning?
Yeah, as I said, there's over 85 labs that you get to work on. Data hiding, you get to do some malware analysis, you get to do some email, pulling emails apart, looking at the email headers, the source and destination. You get to find different types of files inside and use some of the actual forensic tools. So, yes, but for me, I think that's the fun part.
Thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of our time. We did have another person asking about the certification. Any of that will be sent to you via email, I believe. So, and you will get a playback for today's session in the next 24 hours via email. Sam, thank you for so much for joining us again. It really has been a wonderful session. Since we've come to the end of our time, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye and let you guys know that in addition to any of the information we had today, there are a lot of informative webinars that are coming up. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to register for any of those. And we want to thank our audience for joining us today. If any of you do come up with any additional questions or you need further clarification, please feel free to send them to us to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope you all found today's webinar to be very informative. We look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Please feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you everyone for joining in and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Leila.
Thank you. Thank you, Leila. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.